It's easy to judge someone's hiring until someone judges yours. Darren's about to learn that the hard way. Phil had always preferred the early part of lunch hour, when the fridge still held its chill and the microwave hadn't yet soaked the air with curry steam. But today, he'd come late. Meetings, calendar clashes, back-to-backs, and now the room was already half full. Full enough to feel like a crowd, not full enough to disappear into. Darren was talking, loud enough to cut across chairs, not quite loud enough to be challenged. I'm just saying, yeah, like if you can't get through the basic onboarding quiz, day 4, mind you, then maybe you shouldn't be here. A few awkward chuckles flickered around the room, the kind you could plausibly deny if someone called you out. Phil stirred his tea, watching the surface, not Darren. I mean, they say it's all about diversity and all that, Darren continued. But at what point does it become compromise? You've got to be able to do the work, not just, look good in the photos. Phil sipped slowly. He didn't look at Nella, though he noticed she hadn't sat down. Still near the sink, arms crossed, not even pretending to check her phone. Darren leant back in his chair. All I'm saying is, you can't bend the standard for someone who's not up to scratch. That was Darren's version of a closing line. Polished. Practiced. He'd used it before. Phil looked at the clock. He wasn't sure if it was too early or too late to respond. But he felt the room shift. Just a degree. Just enough. Phil stood casually. Not performative. Not to confront, just to stretch his legs and top up the water in his mug. Been here a while, haven't you, Darren? He asked, like making small talk. Darren grinned. 15 years in August. Yeah, mate, been through a few restructures. Right, Phil said, nodding as if calculating something. So that would have been just before the Lloyd Gasper buyout. Yeah, snuck in before all of that. Good timing, I guess. Phil kept his tone light. Who was managing director back then? Darren raised his eyebrows like it was a strange question. Richard Schaefer. Phil paused. Schaefer. Like your surname? Yeah, that's my old man. Phil smiled faintly, then took a sip of water. He didn't say anything for the time being. I was digging through some of the pre-acquisition HR files a while back, Phil said. There were a few contracts that didn't have the usual attachments. No panel notes, no reference checks, just the signature and start date. He let that sentence hang. Not sharp, not heavy, just floating. Darren shrugged, still smiling, but a little tighter now. Different time back then, yeah? Yeah, Phil agreed. Different time. He walked back to his seat, but didn't sit. He looked out over the room like someone noticing the cloud pattern for the first time. You ever wonder what might have happened if you didn't get in when you did? He asked. If the timing, hadn't lined up just so? Darren's reply came slower this time. What do you mean? Phil shrugged, like it wasn't a big deal. Just luck, right? Some people enter at the right moment. Systems haven't changed yet. The rules are still flexible. Right surname, right circumstances. He wasn't looking at Darren anymore. He was scanning the room. The people not involved, but listening. A few heads dipped slightly. A few spoons paused mid-air. Darren cleared his throat. I got the job because I was qualified. Sure, Phil nodded. That's probably true. He turned his mug slightly on the table, wet ring underneath. You're senior ops analyst now. That's not a fluke title. You've clearly picked up a lot. Know the systems inside out. Phil smiled faintly, almost warmly. It takes time to become good at something. Darren nodded. There was tension under it. Phil continued, voice light. That's the thing about opportunity. It gives you time. Time to improve. Time to get good. You got to grow into the job. Develop the skills over years. I wonder how many people could be brilliant if they just got the same amount of time. He took a slow sip. You've earned what you've got now. That's clear. He let the comment sit. But you might not have earned the door you walked through. Not everybody gets to start on second base. There was no anger in his voice. If anything, it was gentle. A thoughtful observation, more than a rebuke. Someone gives you a head start, and eventually you forget you even had one. He met Darren's eyes now. Not out of malice, just forgetfulness. The lunchroom had quietened. The usual background hum, cutlery, casual conversation, someone's tinny phone speaker had faded into stillness. Darren looked like he wanted to respond, but couldn't find the right footing. His voice didn't register offense exactly, more confusion, like someone unsure whether they were being accused or congratulated. Phil didn't press. He turned his head towards Nella, gently. You worked more closely with Darryl than I did, yeah? Nella blinked. She hadn't expected to be pulled in, but she didn't flinch. She stepped forward slightly, not hesitant, deliberate. He was doing fine, she said. New, sure, but careful. Asked good questions. Took notes. She looked at Darren. Her tone didn't shift. No edge, just clarity. You didn't speak to him. You wouldn't have known. Phil nodded. He left because of his sister. Late-stage lymphoma. Moved back to Cairns to help raise her son. He paused. He didn't say much. Quiet resignation. No drama. Just life hitting harder than expected. Darren didn't speak. You said earlier he failed the quiz, Phil went on. He didn't. He passed everything. Just took a bit longer. Most people skip the resources. He was actually reading them. Phil sipped his tea. You told the story about a version of him that never existed, because you needed the story more than you needed the truth. The silence in the room was heavier now. Not hostile, just weighty. You're not critiquing the system, Phil added. You're defending the shape it used to take. Back when it shaped itself around people like you. I've seen this before, Phil said. A person starts somewhere favourable, somewhere soft. They work hard, sure. They get good. And eventually, they forget about that softness. All they remember is the work. He looked at Darren, not accusingly, but like someone trying to understand how the forgetting happened. You're not the villain in this, Darren, but you're not neutral either. Darren shifted in his seat. Phil continued, voice level. You're acting like there's a fairness being violated, like we've lowered the bar. But all we've done is open a few new doors. That doesn't make your path any less valid. It just makes it more visible. He let that last line sit for a bit. And for what it's worth, Phil added, you've clearly earned your current role. Senior ops analyst isn't something someone carries for 15 years by accident. He took a small sip. But if you walked into this building with a different surname, in a different year, I don't know if you'd have lasted long enough to become who you are right now. Phil looked out the window, more to collect the moment than admire the view. That's the bit we all struggle with, the bit we don't want to admit, the sliding door version of ourselves. He turned back to Darren. I don't know if I'd have made it either, to be honest. Some people gave me grace early on. I just didn't call it that at that time. He looked around the room, at people still pretending not to listen. I think we've all had that version of help. Some just get it in ways that don't leave a paper trail. Phil put his tea down. The ceramic gave a soft clink against the laminate. I've been thinking, he said, about the difference between access and advantage. Access is getting in. Advantage is what you do with it. The issue isn't that people are getting access now. It's that some of us have been quietly enjoying the advantage for years. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. It's not that Darryl got help. It's that he got the wrong kind of help. The visible kind. The kind that made you feel like something had been taken from you. Darren's face twitched, just slightly, like he wanted to respond but didn't trust the room anymore. Phil nodded slowly. You're not mad he was supported. You're mad because someone like him was supported. Because it shines a light on how some of us were helped without ever asking. The word settled, and then Phil added, and without ever earning it. The quiet in the room had shifted again. This time, it wasn't tension, it was recognition. A few people looked down. One stirred their coffee but didn't drink. Phil just looked at Darren. I checked the hiring record again last week. No interview notes, no shortlist, no reference checks. Just a signature and a start date. It doesn't mean that you didn't belong. It just means that your belonging was assumed. He smiled gently. And now you're sitting in judgment of someone who had to prove his worth in 3 months flat before life collapsed on him. He looked away and then back. That's not accountability, Darren. That's forgetting where you started. Phil stepped past the table and walked towards the kitchenette. Not to leave, but just to move. I don't want an apology, he said. Not from you, not from anyone. That's not what this is. He turned, leant slightly against the counter, and looked at the floor as he spoke, like he was thinking it through, even now. I just want people to stop mistaking silence for merit, to stop pretending that no one has greased the wheels before them, because they did, for a lot of us. A few faces in the room shifted, subtle glances, a few stiff shoulders. The message wasn't just for Darren. Everybody knew that. You ever noticed, Phil went on, how quiet advantage looks from the inside? You don't see the hand, you just feel the breeze. He returned his gaze to Darren. You've done good work here. No one is disputing that. You've lasted 15 years. You have earned your current seat. Phil paused. But what you haven't earned is the right to tell a story about someone else's worth, especially when your story has chapters you never had to write. Darren said nothing, just stared down at his cooling sandwich. Phil nodded once, then added, softer, If you want Darryl's number, I've still got it. He's up in Cairns now, but it's the same mobile. You could check in, or not. That part's on you. He returned to his chair. No one spoke. Not out of awkwardness, just the kind of pause that forms when the air's been cleared, but no one wants to break the seal too quickly. Phil picked up his mug. Cold now. Still worth drinking. Thanks for sticking around. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Your support helps me create more content just like this. And if you're in the mood for more, check out these videos coming up right here.